Welcome to Aspen Leading Edge. I'm Patty Roberts from St. Mary's University School of Law, and today's guest is Dean Darby Dickerson. She joined Southwestern as its 12th dean and second female dean in July 2021. And that would be impressive enough, except she is one of the longest serving deans in the United States, but at a variety of schools. So she was the inaugural dean at the University of Illinois Chicago School of Law, the dean CEO of the John Marshall Law School that then merged into the University of Illinois Chicago, as dean and the W. Frank Newton Professor of Law at Texas Tech University School of Law, and interim dean and then dean and vice president of Stetson University College of Law. So, wow, welcome, Dean Dickerson.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Let's start with your start in legal education. So where did you start, and at what point and why did you start thinking, maybe I should try to be a dean?
Sure. I actually started teaching as an adjunct professor in the legal writing program at SMU Law School. And then my first full-time program was at Stetson University College of Law in St. Petersburg. I was fortunate enough to be hired onto the tenure track, and my portfolio included legal writing, pretrial practice. I was in charge of the moot court program, ultimately just a couple of months later, also became an advisor to the law review. But I always had an administrative appointment of some sort from the first day that I entered legal academia full time. And it's just something I really enjoy because in addition to being able to work with and help individual students, I got to help first larger groups of students in the legal writing program. And I also like administrative work because so much really gets done in committees, and I figured that out early on. So I would volunteer to serve on committees and thought that was actually a lot of fun. And I saw how I could have an influence. So because I was gravitating towards that, I was pretty quickly asked to be what was then the only associate dean in the law school back when we didn't have as many administrators. Loved doing that, was in charge of the academic side of the house, was then asked on the retirement of our vice dean to take that role. And I was a little resistant because it was all of the non-academic departments at Stetson. And Stetson is a freestanding law school. It's affiliated with the university, but we have our own campuses across the state. But someone talked me into doing it. They said, you should learn the whole school. By that point, I was sort of thinking maybe I would like to be a dean because I love matching resources with people and programs and connecting people to people and building things. So I accepted that. And more quickly than I would have thought, I thought, okay, let me just see what this dean thing is about, because even though you're sitting in the next office, I realized I probably didn't realize everything was going on. And as I was sending out my first set of feelers, something very sad happened. I was called into the dean's office and told that I would be interim dean because my dean at that point, Gary Voss, was dying of terminal cancer.
Oh, that's terrible.
Absolutely terrible. I let them know that I'd actually started applying for other deanships and that I absolutely wanted to help, but I didn't know I was making a wise move at the time, but I said I would gladly serve as interim dean if I could be considered for the dean position whenever the search might occur, because sometimes interim deans aren't allowed to then participate in that search. And I know that happened to people after me at that school. So Gary very sadly passed away on graduation day.
Oh.
He passed away about 2 a.m. and our ceremony was at about 9 or 10 a.m. So that was my first duties, were to actually call all the faculty and staff and members of our board of overseers to let them know about that. So that's quite a way to start a deanship. And then I was 39. Gary was in his 60s. The vice dean, who had retired just a couple months before, was in his 60s. And my number two was also 39. So you can imagine everyone in the school looking at us thinking, literally, the kids are in charge. How is this?
Exactly. Quite unexpectedly, yes.
Everyone pulled together, and the interim year, although sad in many respects, was amazing because everyone did realize what an inflection point that was for the school. And I was very lucky to be selected in a national search for that position in state aid years. So that's sort of how it came about.
Well, that is a very sad story for the initial start, but how wonderful that you were there to steady the ship following such a tragedy. And what year was that you became dean?
2003.
2003. So you have now been a dean more than 20 years.
More than 21 years. I'm in year
More than
22.
21 years. Wow. That is incredible. But I guess to keep it fresh, you regularly moved to another school. So what prompted you initially to think, maybe I don't want to be at Stetson forever. I might look at something else?
Sure. I thought I might want to be a university president. I had been doing the dean job. I had been working with Stetson's Center for Higher Education Law and Policy with some amazing people, learning a lot about student life and crisis management and enterprise risk management and so much more. And I really was intrigued by those areas. And I thought the next logical step was a university presidency. So I started again putting out some feelers, and it wasn't working out. And I was really looking to go to a smaller school. And I'm like, these schools I'm applying to are about the same size as the freestanding law school I'm running. Why am I not getting any bites? The headhunters told me that I wasn't perceived to have any central university experience because I was within a university, but on a separate campus. And they suggested that if I really wanted to pursue a presidency, that I needed to move to a law school that was on the same campus as the rest of the university. And as the universe will sometimes do, I got a call from Texas Tech, Texas lawyer. My brother lives in Dallas still. And I thought, wow, like of all the schools to approach, that was an interesting one. And this was in early 2011. And if you roll the clock back, while we have an increasing number of deans, if you roll the clock back, there were a much smaller number of women deans and an even smaller who were external candidates. Most of us were internal candidates. I knew I was at a point, I'd been at Stetson 16 years, Dean 8, that this might be one of the few opportunities I had to exit to another dean position because deans weren't moving around as much either. So I took that position, quickly learned I didn't want to be president of a university. I saw what that entailed, and it really wasn't how I want to give my best service. I felt like the presidents at large universities didn't have their own constituencies. Everyone who was part of their constituency actually belonged to someone else.
And what an interesting viewpoint.
Yeah, and it was much more like figurehead work. It was a lot of sports and Greek work, and I thought that's just, it's not my community. And as I was watching some of my other colleagues move to schools without law schools, I thought, I love the legal profession. I really want to be part of the legal profession and be at a place with a law school. And I went to a conference at the John Marshall Law School in Chicago. I'm a Southerner. I grew up in South Carolina, lived most of my adult life in Florida and Texas. And someone jokingly said, hey, our dean just announced his retirement. You should apply to be our dean. And I said, it snows here. And then I thought, why would I say that? Chicago is such an amazing city, and I can be captain of the ship, right? Like I can have more autonomy, not have to go through levels of bureaucracy to get things done for my students in my school. So I applied and was lucky enough to be selected for that, only to find out that what the board really was interested in exploring was a merger with the University of Illinois, Chicago. Something
So
that
you didn't know that till after you accepted the position?
I knew it right about the time I accepted the position, but I'd also
Oh.
already told my provost I was probably leaving. So it came as a bit of a surprise. President of the board there, she was fantastic. And she said, well, I know you like a challenge and this will give you a challenge and it may not work out. So if it doesn't work out, you got the job you originally applied for. So I thought, can't give up this opportunity to try it.
Yeah.
To be the head of the organization reporting directly to a board. And, you know, if the merger works, what an amazing thing to be a part of in legal ed. When will that ever come my way? And if it works, we'll create Chicago's first public law school. There have been 6 law schools, but all private. If it doesn't work out, I get to run a fantastic independent school.
Well, that was quite a challenge to take on rather unexpectedly, but I'm not surprised that you were able to pull it off. How long did that period take from when you started until the merger was successful?
Yeah, I think I technically took over January 1, 2017, a mid-year move, which was interesting. And then the merger closed October 15th, 2029. So about 2.5 years. So I was CEO and Dean of the Independent for 2.5 years, loved it. It was an incredible process. Susan Poser, a former law dean, was the provost at UIC. So it was great working with her on it. Amazing learning experience. But I had told everyone if the merger was successful, I did not want to work for a large public bureaucracy. That's what I had left. The University of Illinois is one of the largest. There's so many levels because it's a system. People are great there, but it's just not where I do my best work and am happiest. So they knew that if it went through, I probably wasn't going to stay that long. And I also said, if Susan ever leaves, I'll be right behind her. And she announced, I think it was early December of 2020, that she was moving to be president at Hofstra. And 2 weeks later, Southwestern called me out of the blue.
Well, the universe continues to respond to your manifestations. I
I've
love
been
it.
very fortunate.
I look at those things as blessings and God at work, but how wonderful that that happened again. And so you went to Southwestern, and now you are again the independent president and dean. And so share some of the positives of that and maybe some of the challenges, because most of us are not independent law schools, but I do know that you all have become quite collegial as deans of independent law schools to help face some of the challenges. But I'd love for you to share some of the experiences.
Absolutely. I love being at a private independent, primarily because you can move quickly. So if you have a good idea or if you see the market turning, you can get it done quickly, assuming that you can get your internal constituencies on board. So one big example is Southwestern had gotten one of the very first variances back in 2016, 2017 to do more online in the JD program. And for some various reasons decided not to pursue it, but there was a lot of expertise here and some classes had been developed and people were still interested in it. I had been very interested in starting an online JD program, but at the University of Illinois, Chicago, to get something like that approved through all of the levels within the university and then the system and then the Illinois state government was about a 2-year process. And then to sign contracts was hard.
Oh, yeah, you'd still be working on it.
I'd still be working on it. Here, we were able to go from me appointing the committee to receiving the letter from the ABA saying go in 11 months. So being able to do like that. And sometimes I joke that I'm not a queen and I'm not a CEO, but sometimes I can wave my wand. So we were able to do a few things when I came in very quickly. Like I was able to set up a food pantry within a week. I was able to set up a professional clothes closet within a couple of weeks. Those things would have all had many, many steps in other systems. So I love that. I love that we're a professional oasis. It's a challenge because some faculty members and students want to be part of a broader university and do more interdisciplinary programming, but we're in LA, so there's plenty of
Plenty
ways,
of partners, right?
plenty of partners to do programs with. And the other thing I love is actually working directly with the board. That can be a challenge too, but the boards I've had the honor of working for, those folks are so dedicated. I mean, they're volunteers that give a lot back, and it's great being in a law school environment because most are lawyers. So you get to, again, keep that connection with the practice and just have more direct connection between your board and your students and your faculty. I think the biggest two challenges are you're going it alone. So I was actually pretty glad that when the pandemic hit, we weren't fully integrated into the University of Illinois system, but we had all those resources and they have an amazing health and medical team. So we were getting really up to information and interpretations, and we had help setting up testing. That was a blessing to be there. And then because I learned how to do it in Chicago, LA was a year behind reopening. I could bring that knowledge here. But if you're alone, you have to really go find those resources or work with consortium of schools like we often do get together and share information, the independents. But it's harder. And the other thing is just financial. There's no safety net. It is you. So keeping your eye on the prize, making sure you have a great CFO, and thinking about how you're going to ensure you have strong fundraising and or diversifying your revenue is a challenge.
Well, and while it's all you, and any losses you have to struggle with alone, at the same time, any surpluses you get to decide how to deploy. That's
Absolutely.
pretty exciting.
It's very exciting, and I've been at schools that have planned well, and that's another reason we've been able to start new programs, because there is the capacity to dip into reserve funds to do strategic initiatives. Whereas if you're in a larger university, if you're at the law school, you usually don't have access to that unless you have a separate foundation, which I did have at Texas Tech and was fortunate, but you don't have to share the surplus.
I was very impressed. We did a similar thing as you in starting our online JD, and I was very fortunate we were able to kind of have that same rapid timeline here. I think only because we were post-pandemic. So then at least people knew that like it could be done. It didn't necessarily mean it was done as well as it could have been. But so we started the online part-time JD program here at St. Mary's. But I was so thrilled to hear that Southwestern was joining us and others in providing a part-time online JD program. But you have the first full-time online JD program starting at an ABA accredited school. So tell us a little bit about that and how it's going.
Sure. Well, our first students will start in a couple of weeks. They're already doing parts of orientation. Southwestern was founded in 1911. We were the second law school founded in Southern California. USC was the first. And back then, they didn't really take women or people of color. They certainly didn't have a part-time program. So it's interesting that we started as a part-time program. So this program is actually replacing our evening program, which was a big deal for us. But I said to the faculty that was working on the program, if we're going to do this, we need to be unique. So bring an idea that's creative and fills a need. And they're the ones who came up with the full-time program. And I thought that's brilliant. The faculty committee just did such a great job. So we knew we wanted and needed the part-time program because it was the next evolution of our evening program. But the reasons we were looking at to expand into online included reaching people who needed maximum flexibility. And we realized that that can include people who are new parents, people who are traveling, military spouses, and people who just don't live near an ABA law school and don't want to or can't move.
Absolutely.
So they realized that some people could do it in 3 years. So why not give them that opportunity? The numbers are still shifting a little bit. We were originally thinking we'd have a class of 50. Looks like we're going to start with about 90.
Holy
And
cow.
I know, right?
For the
That's what
full-time?
faculty
Wow.
said when they heard the numbers. Holy cow, both good and bad. And it's about 50-50, which surprised us. We really thought it would be 25 to 30% full-time, but I'm sure there's pent-up demand in the marketplace for this. And right now, it looks like the students are maybe 40-45% from the state of California. All over California, there's certainly more from Southern California, just because that's our general market anyway. Those were the people who would have come to the evening program. But we had people, I think there are at least 20 states represented, from Massachusetts to Washington State. So it's a really great mix of students geographically and in terms of full-time and part-time. And the other thing we did, and this was a tough decision, you know, because you've had to make these decisions, our program is fully asynchronous. You can finish the whole thing
Wow.
without doing a fully synchronous class or an on-campus class. We think most people will do some combination, and every synchronous class has many synchronous optional sessions that we'll obviously record. But we thought if we're doing this, we want to make sure that the students don't have to expend a lot of resources to get to us. So there's no on-campus residency requirement for it. We hope they will come visit with us, or at least come to graduation. But we tried to just be mindful of who our students are. We're more than 50% diverse, more than 50% first gen, and more than 60% women, with a lot of families and multi-generational families. So we were trying to give them the opportunity again, not to incur those transportation and Southern California living costs if they didn't need to.
We have a similar student population as far as your demographics go. And it's funny, when I had first started here, I charged the faculty committee with looking at developing a hybrid program. And they came back after we talked about the reasons and the flexibility and the accessibility and all of that. And they did similar to your faculty and said, well, if you really want to do all those things, then it should be entirely online. So it's exciting that these options now exist. I'm curious, though, with an entirely asynchronous program, how do you ensure the student identity?
Sure. And one thing I did during the pandemic, because we were sort of thinking about this path at UIC, and once I was coming to Southwestern, I knew their history. I spent a lot of time taking classes through the University of Illinois Springfield's ION program and earned a Master Online Teacher and Master Online Administrator certificate. So I realized that hybrid was the toughest, and the faculty after the pandemic thought hybrid was the toughest. So we know there'll be a little hybrid over the years for some faculty who don't mind it, but we are building asynchronous orientation modules with some amazing professional identity programs. So there are a lot of scenarios that the students have to engage with and engage with each other on. And we're offering them a lot of opportunity. So every asynchronous course, which is virtually all of them, there is a synchronous session every 2 to 3 weeks. Plus the faculty member holds office hours, the TAs hold office hours. We're doing a lot of programming. We're starting a new 1L professionalism and civility program that includes book discussion groups and going to programs. And then, very exciting news, I was able to convince the American Inns of Court to allow us to establish the nation's first entirely virtual Inn of Court.
So that's fabulous.
Yeah.
What a great idea.
So the students who are remote can do that. The students, we also have an on-campus Inn of Court. And a lot of these students, again, like one I talked to, he's moving literally across the street, but he works full time. But he's like, I want to be close because I want to be able to run over to the programming and participate. We're also encouraging them to get involved with their local bar associations. We've hired a staff member, who's very experienced, who's going to help place them in externships and develop job strategies and networking strategies. So we have a lot of ways to socialize them and help them to build that identity.
That's terrific. Well, good luck with that. And I know you had tremendous interest for applications because we continue to. And as more and more law schools offer these programs, I think we're really going to make a difference in providing access and opportunity to those who thought they would never have this opportunity. So excellent news. Now, you have also started, since your arrival at Southwestern, a leadership series for staff in higher and legal education. I'm intrigued by that idea. But then if you can tell us a little bit about the leadership series and what it culminated in and what new ideas have come from that.
Sure, thank you. When I showed up, there was a movement to have ongoing staff professional development, and it was LinkedIn Learning, and then someone on the more senior staff would hold a session to sort of walk through key points. And we did that for a year, and I thought, that was nice, but I think people are hungry to learn more holistically about higher education and legal education. So modeling this on a program run out of the University of Illinois system, where they take a group of people, and for a year you get to go see all the different campuses and learn about different topics. I thought, let me do that internally. So we're almost through our second year of doing this. Any staff member, whether they're a department head or someone who's brand new in any department, can participate. We meet for an hour and a half on Zoom because we now have so many remote employees because of our online program and just other circumstances. And we pick a topic each month, and topics include things like accreditation, not just ABA accreditation, but what does accreditation mean? Why do we have it? Why is it a good thing? What are the complications of accreditation? Governance, the student experience, career services, admissions. We've just picked a lot of topics, fundraising, and typically someone from within the organization sends out some brief readings to the group in advance. and then gives an interactive presentation. But I realized that the group was hungry to get hands-on. So we started working through hypotheticals or tabletop exercises, like what happens if you have a sit-in, or what happens if a donor wants to give you a lot of money, but maybe it's a cannabis industry, or maybe it's an alum who has something in their past that maybe putting that name with the school could cause some reputational issues. And they love doing that. So more recently, I thought, well, let's switch it up, because most of the people who started with me last year continued this year. And I ran something almost like a Shark Tank. And I divided them into 3 groups. So each group had maybe 5 to 7 members. And I said, come with an idea that you have to improve the school that could be implemented on a 12 to 18 month time frame, and that you could implement for $50,000. And I told them that if I bought the idea, I would fund it. And it was amazing. We ended up doing this in 2 chunks, because one group right away had an idea that I bought. It was a badge for student practice readiness that's going to live in the library. And we're already working on that. And that's just going to be an amazing opportunity for our students. But they were so excited that they had come up with an idea that when I heard it, I said, that's going to help the students. And they're like, that's what we thought. We're so excited. We were right on spot with that. And then gave everyone else another chance to come back. And another group came back with a legal technology badge, and eventually maybe building a legal tech hub. We're going to do that one. And the third group, and I don't want to say what it is right now, but they've come up with the idea for a national conference for law students and employers in an area where there's a gap. And so in December 2025, we're going to look to implement their program as an annual, probably national program. And so they were very excited about that. None of them needed the whole $50,000 budget. Some of these things, were almost free to create, or just low cost, because we already had infrastructure. But they're so proud and so excited. And we're already thinking about, like, what are we going to do next year for the program?
It's brilliant. Brilliant to have your staff come up with ideas. I'm sure they have ideas all the time at law schools everywhere. The staff are the front lines, right? And so to give them an opportunity to showcase that knowledge and initiative and innovation in the way that you have, I just love it. Really great, inspirational story. And the badges sound like a terrific idea.
Yeah, I think we're going to have 3 badges for students, and a lot of them are things that we encourage our students to do all the time. And even the students recognize they're important, but they're thinking, well, should I do A or B? And I think if we can give them some sort of credential to show that they've mastered a skill or taken the time to engage in certain type of study and work, that will help them make the choice to do those things that we encourage them to do.
Outstanding. Well, I know that I could talk to you for hours more and would learn a tremendous amount, but we're about out of time. So I want to wrap up our conversation by asking you what I ask all my guests, and that is, what are your predictions for the future of legal education in the coming decade? How do you think it is likely to evolve? You certainly bring a lot of lenses to that particular question.
I wish I did have that crystal ball. I definitely think there'll be more online education. I think that's inevitable post-pandemic. I think that the way things are going, we may actually see fully online law schools that are ABA accredited. I have my concerns about that, because I have a brick and mortar school I've got to keep. But, when you think about students and their finances, maybe that works out. One thing I hope to see is a lot more collaboration among law schools. I don't think we have to be experts in everything, but I hope that we can build our own areas of expertise and share. And I feel like schools are moving in that direction. I hope libraries will move in that direction a little more, because that's such a huge expense. And I see things sitting on the shelves that people don't use. And I'm like, is there a way for us to divvy up the cost so that we have access to it, but can put that money to something else, whether it's scholarships or faculty salaries? And I think we're probably going to see a demand, and it's been on and off in some jurisdictions, for more legal training for people who do not want to be lawyers. And something I know that we're looking into as soon as we get the online JD launched are micro credentials. So maybe MLS degrees, but I just feel like so many people are looking for smaller chunks that they can do on demand. So I think we're going to definitely see something like that as well. And then the final thing I would hope we would see is I would love to see major reform in bar admissions. We were starting to see this. We're starting to see more pathways. I just don't think the bar exam test the legal skills really pertinent to being a lawyer. They test memorization skills and speed and things that I don't think most lawyers value. And I know there have been reforms in that area, but it's not enough.
Wholeheartedly agree with you on the latter. And if we're going to try to increase access and opportunity to a legal education, we have to then ensure that they can be licensed. So yes, I hope that those reforms continue. And Washington and Oregon give us hope. New
Absolutely.
Hampshire, yeah.
Actually, a pathways program proposal pending in California, believe it or not.
Oh, terrific. Well, good luck with that. I look forward to hearing how that goes. Well, thank you so much for sharing the many experiences you've had as a dean over the last 22 years. I'm always excited when I find another non-traditional law dean candidate. I too started as an adjunct many, many years ago, but we can make good deans, right? With enough administrative experience. So thank you for sharing those and talking with us about Southwestern's new entirely online JD for both full and part-time students, and your leadership series for staff that has resulted in the badges that your students will be able to earn. Appreciate having you on the show.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
All right, if you've enjoyed this conversation, I hope that you'll listen to other episodes on the places where you find your favorite podcasts, any of the podcast channels, and also the Aspen Leading Edge webpage. Thank you.